This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. I wanted to just do a video today whilst Elodie sleeps in the car seat for a bit, just around this idea that I saw crop up somewhere, and I thought, yeah, that kind of resonates with me. Someone had said a comment, I can't remember where it was, it might have been on a forum or something, about kind of gear fatigue, and I thought as a concept this to me makes quite a lot of sense. So I am a guitarist first, is how I think of what I do, because even although, you know, I make a lot of videos, too many, the idea really is that it's an excuse for me to get to play the guitar. There have been times in my life where guitar wasn't able to be kind of the priority. I'm in one of those phases now, by the way, but I still, luckily, because I have this YouTube thing, I do get to play guitar pretty much every day, and that's kind of the whole reason for having the channel in the first place. The kind of hook for the channel in a lot of ways, and the way that people will find your videos or my videos, it's more likely if I do a video on a piece of gear that they will discover whatever it is I'm doing in my little corner of TubeU. And so that's really been part of the engine as well. You know, by the time that you're making daily videos, if I was just using what I'm really happy with all the time, it would give us, you know, quite a narrow pool of stuff to make videos on. With that said, I think, you know, per piece of gear, I think I'm definitely guilty of ringing as many videos as possible out of one piece of gear if I like the piece of gear. You know, whether it's an HX Stomp, I've done a lot on that. The PRS DGT SE, I've done loads on that, and so on. So if you, sometimes I get people that happen along the channel and assume that everything I do is a paid endorsement for some company. It very rarely actually is. and I'll tell you in the videos when it is. Some of the stuff that I've been most enthusiastic about in the last year, whether it was the PRS DGT SE that I talked about, the Friedman IRX, the Boss IR2, of course, yeah, those things I've talked very positively about. I paid for all of those. I didn't talk particularly positively about the Fender ToneMaster Pro. I tried to be upfront and, you know, kind of represent it in the context of every other modeler that has existed for the last kind of 8 years. And so, you know, that didn't end up coming out particularly positively, unfortunately. That will annoy some people that really like the ToneMaster Pro. Some people who know what I usually do will probably be able to put in the context that I'm not just slagging off a thing for the sake of it. Or, you know, like that Gibson Greenie video that I did that people didn't like in some cases either, where I paid £3,000 for a guitar and, you know, was a little bit disappointed, to be honest. So I think for me, it does sort of get a little bit frustrating in some ways if someone assumes that everything is a paid endorsement, purely because maybe I do about 2 or 3 of those a month in a really good month, and most of the rest of the month is made up of videos where I'm just making videos either with gear that I've borrowed off of a mate, or gear that I'm just actually genuinely interested in that I've bought. That is kind of, I've found that personally I'm more invested in gear when I've paid money for it, like I assume most of the people that are watching my videos might have as well. It is definitely possible to make a YouTube channel, and if you get it to, you know, the state that mine is in now, I'm pretty sure that I could get, you know, more paid stuff if I was actively seeking it out. And, you know, I'm pretty sure that a lot of companies might be fairly receptive to ideas if I approach them. But it's not the main part of what I'm interested in doing. It's kind of just a little thing to help pay for some extra nappies occasionally. And the reason I think I keep that energy is that gear fatigue is real. So there have been times when maybe I've had someone who's like sent a piece of gear and you try and do something with it and maybe it doesn't work out first time, or it's just kind of maybe a busy time of year and that piece of gear kind of sits in the room like a little bit of a burden, is a way that I felt at times. And for me personally, I do know that if I just wanted to sit down and play guitar, I do pretty much have a good idea of what I'd grab. It'd be my HX Stomp, it would be my blue K-line. At the moment I've been playing the yellow K-line, I've really got into that quite heavily too. But I think regular viewers of the channel, I think you definitely have a good sense of that, right? I think that's the case, that you are fairly knowledgeable. You've seen me talk about the HX Stomp enough. You've seen me play that blue K-line every day. I think that kind of, there is a baseline of folks that know that stuff. Now, the gear fatigue thing, I think I associate it quite commonly, and I'm definitely guilty of being involved in some of these as well. In the launches where we see people like me with heads like mine talking about the latest piece of gear, which may or may not actually be relevant. They may or may not actually ever play it again. And yeah, it's just an interesting thing where it's like a thing that someone's doing. Possibly they might actually genuinely be interested in the piece of gear. So for me, the Tonex was one thing where initially I was thinking, right, this is interesting because it was kind of the only thing that wasn't less than £1,500 at the time that could do the profiling thing. Now that the Kemper Player is here, that's not, well, I can't actually do the profiling thing, I can only play them. But anyway, it was interesting to me, so that was one piece of like paid promotion stuff that I did that I thought, yeah, that's interesting. There's been other stuff that is less interesting, but then there's also, can I think of like examples of stuff that I've done a paid demo of that I'm not necessarily going to use live? Yeah, I can think of a few things like that actually, like the Walrus ACS1. I've never used that live, but I did do like a video kind of highlighting their firmware update that they paid me for. But there are other Walrus audio products that I really like, so I guess that was part of the motivation for doing that. So they sent me the Walrus Audio Slower as well, which the Walrus Audio Slow I'd done a bunch of videos on because my wife bought me one of them and that was my favourite reverb for quite a while. But yeah, like the gear fatigue thing, seeing every Johnny YouTuber come out with the Fender Tone Master Pro video at the same time, I can totally get why you'd think, right, well, this is clearly a very targeted sort of marketing splash, right? And I can see that being annoying for regular viewers. And certainly I feel like that when I'm not involved in a thing and I can see it from the viewer's perspective. You know, if you're on YouTube and you watch YouTube stuff and you see other people coming out with stuff, to me, I don't necessarily feel like I should have been involved, but you do then see more clearly the way that these videos have kind of spread out like fingers or branches onto the YouTubes. For me, the gear fatigue thing can be sort of solved by trying to focus on some aspect of just playing. So that for me is what I try to keep at the forefront of all of my videos. That's why they all start with me improvising. And particularly in this video, for instance, I was focusing on first finger bends being a thing. I think I saw a video with Jake Wilson doing some stuff with them, and I thought, well, that's a novel idea. And I'm thinking that throughout like the rest of this week, that'll be one focus of my playing, like bends, because switching between guitars, I can sometimes lose a bit of confidence in bends, not knowing, some might be fixed bridge, some might be a floating trem. Trying to get confident with a bend and stick some of that into the improvisation. And there might be like little bits and pieces like that, like pick up a guitar next time you're watching YouTube and just think, right, I'm going to play guitar whilst I watch whoever talk about whatever. That could be an idea. Just playing with what you already have. Don't forget that what you've already got in a lot of cases is probably going to be enough to at least enjoy playing guitar for a bit. For me, I've found that the more amps that I bought, the less I was getting out of each amp that I bought. And to the stage where you've probably seen that I've sold off a load and load of gear. Likewise with guitars, I've found that the more guitars I've acquired over the years, the more I found that actually each new guitar, like the honeymoon period, even seems to last less and less time. So yeah, that's a thing to remember. And another really good thing, and I guess this gear fatigue and gas, they kind of go hand in hand, I think. Borrowing gear off of friends, I think, is a really, really, really great idea. So even if you're not making YouTube videos, I think there's still validity. Like, I loan bits of gear to my friends. They get to check out a piece of gear without the cost, without the burden, without the kind of buyer's regret sort of thing. And so pieces of gear that I'm borrowing at the moment, for instance, from Tony up the road, all right, Tony, like this PRS, I'm not really going to go out and buy a 4, 5, 6 grand PRS, but I can play his because he's generous enough to let me check it out. I've reciprocated by letting him borrow an Indonesian PRS, but you get the idea. Like, just trying out a mate's gear, as long as you've got friends that are going to look after it, I think that's a really good idea and convenient. You're not trapped in like the gas cycle, the gear cycle, and you can think, right, well, I might probably get to try some of these new things. Like I said to Tony, you'll have to try this Boss IR2. It means that we've essentially got similar interests and he can try out a piece of gear without necessarily having to buy it. I think that's quite a nice idea. But again, that's just a little video. Like, gear fatigue, I think is real, and particularly tied in with like aggressive marketing as well. You can think, right, is this really another drive pedal that someone's pushing towards me, or another delay video coming up soon, actually, Walrus Audio. I need to look into when that is. Trying to keep it in mind that I'm not responsible for the videos that you get shown that I made, but I'm regularly making videos that have nothing to do with gear. I do like a legato lesson every week, and plenty of stuff that is talking about stuff that is not pushing a piece of gear on to you. So, I think that's something to bear in mind. There are plenty of other things happening. It might just be that the algorithm itself is going to show you certain things for whatever reason. Have you ever been kind of bored of the whole kind of gear thing? I'd like to know your thoughts if you've got them, if you want to share them, and help the video get out to other people. Yeah, for me, like the Two Rock thing that I bought off Jake, like it feels a little bit silly in some ways, and I could totally see people rolling their eyes and thinking, well, like, why would you spend that much on an amp? And I totally get that, and like this whole kind of, yeah, it makes sense to me as someone who has always, like, as a kid growing up, had this idea that you had to get kind of value for money. That's a big part of what still I find interesting, which again is why things like this that are not expensive, or like my K-Line Strat that was blue that was £800, the things that I make most connections to, I think are generally things that are cheaper or that I've got for a bargain, or that I can perceive as being valuable for doing lots of things really well or replacing other bits of my gear. That's still my mindset in general. I'd like to know if yours is as well. Gear fatigue, is it real? Cheers for stopping by.